On the 11th of May 2025, so exactly a year ago, we lost our daughter Lila due to a placenta abruption at 32 weeks pregnant. I've already shared my birth story and everything that happened that day, but I haven't shared really what happened after that. The grief, the healing, postpartum, and with my last video, I received a lot of feedback, actually a lot of messages from women and men across the world who had been through the same thing and found comfort in my video. You know what? I can relate to that. When you go through something so horrific, life-changing, honestly, something like this changes you on a cellular level, you really look for community or someone else out there that has experienced what you have just experienced, because otherwise it can feel extremely isolating and lonely. I'm really grateful that that video reached the right people. If you would like to watch the first video, I will put the link up here somewhere. I think I ended the initial video talking about the placenta abruption, the trip to the hospital, what happened in the hospital, but I think I finished around about the time of my husband coming in with her, me only getting a few minutes with her, and then being taken down into intensive care. So I basically bled out a lot on the journey to the hospital, and I also lost a lot of blood in my C-section. Now, my situation was an emergency situation. I actually had a category 1 emergency C-section. I think there are 4 categories, and I was category 1, which means immediate risk to a baby's life and mother's life. Basically, what I want to say with that is the manner that everything was done was in a rush. My C-section was obviously done in an emergency setting, much quicker than a regular C-section or even another category of an emergency C-section. What I'm trying to say with that is my recovery process was a little bit more difficult than maybe the average person that goes through a C-section, and I'll explain that a little bit further on. After the initial day, I was in the intensive care for a couple of days. Then I was showing really great signs of recovery. So they put me up onto the maternity ward, which I feel like is bizarre. And a lot of other lost mums that I've spoken to are actually put in just the regular maternity ward, surrounded by either pregnant women or women that have just had babies. And that is incredibly difficult for somebody that has just lost their baby. I remember being in the bed, and next to me was a heavily pregnant lady, and somebody came in about 3-4 in the morning to do a Doppler to listen for the baby's heartbeat. And I remember literally having to put my fingers in my ears to not hear it, because it was just too painful to hear a heartbeat, knowing that not only did I not have a baby inside of me anymore when 24 hours I did, but that baby was gone and without a heartbeat. After that, I was taken to a private room, and then in these moments, you know, you've got people coming in and out asking questions. Now, firstly, they give you a form asking, you know, about your mental health, which I find bizarre, and you have to answer these questions about if you have depression, if you feel sad, you know, from 1 to 10, how likely are you to off yourself? You know, you feel like saying, I'm not the greatest I've ever been, but you also don't want to put too much about how you feel on there, because then you might end up in a psych ward. So, you know, if I found that very bizarre, and the lady sat next to me while I was filling it out, and it was like, from 1 to 10, how sad are you? And I was like, I think it might be a 10. Also, my husband is coming in, and he was very restricted about how many times he could come in and see me, especially when I was in intensive care. But when I got my private room, which I think we both fought for the fact that I just couldn't handle the maternity ward any longer, he was able to stay with me all the time, which I was very thankful for. But he had to come and go because he had a lot to organize. And I think we think a lot about the mothers in this situation, but in my case, the father on the other side has to deal with a lot of the paperwork, the difficult decisions. And I remember him coming in and asking me, you know, we have to decide if we want to bury her or cremate her. And they're pushing you. He told me that within half an hour of her passing, that there was already somebody at the hospital from the funeral home waiting to, I don't know, sell their packages. That's a lot, you know. My husband was, first of all, not knowing if I was going to make it, if the baby was going to make it. And then he finds out that his baby has not made it, that I'm fighting for my life. And now he has to make a decision of whether we bury or cremate the baby. It's bizarre. So this is all going on while, I'm still recovering. I'd lost 2.7 liters of blood, but I found it bizarre how they were literally coming in with syringes, huge ones, and taking blood out from me. And I thought, I don't have a lot of blood left, so I don't know why you're taking so much. But I was being, oh my God, prodded and poked every 10 minutes. It felt like I actually ran out of veins in the end. I was put on lots of different medication. One medication made me really, really loopy. In the end, because I had so many changes of nurses, we asked another nurse. Actually, my husband asked, like, this is not doing her well. What is it? And I think they explained it was how fast they were putting it. It was a drip in my hand and they'd inject it in. And I think it was putting it into my body too fast. And it made me have intense anxiety. Like, I would get out of bed and I would panic and I'd be like, oh my God, and I couldn't breathe, and I said, get me out of here, I can't be in here, I can't do this anymore. And it sent me into like immense panic very, very quickly, and then I could come down. I remember my husband coming in and he kept saying, we have to make a decision, they're rushing us, they can't keep her here in the hospital for too long, like the funeral home has to take her. So we decided to cremate for the fact that I didn't want to bury her in a place where I wouldn't be able to visit. So we made that decision, and they were holding on for my recuperation pretty much. But it got to a few days and they were saying that Wednesday, the funeral home would have to go and pick her up. I still hadn't been cleared. I still hadn't gotten out of bed. I had severe bleeding. Obviously, I don't know what the word is, but for all the blood loss and everything, I had bruised pretty much all the way down my thighs. I mean, black bruising, horrific bruising around my stomach and all the way up to here. And I was swollen. I was really, really swollen. I think some of the blood had escaped under the skin. I'm not 100% sure, but it wasn't pretty. So I really wanted to be there to say goodbye to her. I really, really wanted to. And for that, I had to prove that I could get out of bed. So I forced myself to get up and walk and show the nurses that, I'm okay. Luckily, they let me go down to the morgue. For some reason, we also had to identify it in a way. We had to be there when the funeral home came to say, yes, that's our baby. My husband wanted to do it on his own. He wanted me to obviously stay and rest, but I just felt this motherly instinct to be there and to say goodbye. And it was a really tough decision that I was playing with, whether I wanted to see her that way or not. And I think I decided very last minute that yes, I was going to do it. So we went down. She was in like a morgue, and there was like these back doors onto a car park, and there was this big stocky guy there. He was waiting for us. He didn't say much really, and there she was. And we had to say, yeah, that's her. I wanted to say goodbye, obviously. And I remember touching her little cheek, and I told her that I loved her. And her little cheek was frozen, obviously. She'd been in there for a few days now. I just watched these two men then come. And it was a pickup truck in the car. The pickup trucks where they have the cover on the back, though, which I think you might be able to take on and off. I'm not sure. They got out a tiny blue coffin. They put her body in there, and then they walked away. And that was the last time I saw her. And I remember following them to the car park, through the double doors. And it was sunset, and the sky was all these beautiful pastel-y pinky colors with like wispy clouds. And I just remember watching the truck pull away and get further and further and further away. And I just remember sobbing in the arms of my husband in the car park. Went back. I had to have, I think, another night in the hospital before I got discharged the next day. Another extremely difficult phase, which is postpartum without a baby. And funnily enough, somebody asked me recently when I was mentioning hair loss, and they're growing back now, and I've got those annoying wispy things here, but grateful that they're growing back. Oh, so you also had to go through the hair loss? And I thought, yeah, we go through everything else that a woman would go through with a baby after birth. We just don't have the baby. So for me, it was difficult first, I couldn't look at my C-section scar for a very long time. One, because it was a horror show down there, let me tell you. For the nature of the C-section, I actually had a lot of fluid around it. They had to put pinpricks around it to drain it. So I was leaking fluid from my C-section scar, and I had to get drained every day, initially by the doctor, then after my partner, who would drain it, clean it, put new bandage on it, and yeah. It was really, really difficult at that point because I'd lost so much blood on that day. I lost 2.7 liters. That's like almost imminent death. I just didn't want to see any blood anymore. And there was blood coming out of my C-section scar. Then obviously you have the, is it Locklear? Bleeding after birth. So yeah, I was pretty much in a nappy having myself drained. So that means that somebody's pushing around the scar, trying to get the liquid out through the holes to drain it so it doesn't get infected. I think it was about 6 weeks later that most of it had been drained and I wasn't having to change the bandages every day. It still took me a really long time to look at myself in the mirror because I was looking at a postpartum body. I was looking at somebody, you know, that had just given birth, and I couldn't recognize myself anymore, and I couldn't look at the scar without just being reminded of what had happened. And you know, I have this scar, I have this battle wound, but I don't have the gift that was meant to come from it, which is my daughter. Also, you're dealing with the intense hormones that, you know, postpartum is difficult and can be extremely difficult for somebody with a baby. Now, teaming that up with the immense grief and shock that you have with the hormonal changes is a really dangerous recipe. You know, if you have the right support, it can be great, but we were completely alone. I wouldn't say completely. There was, you know, a few people that really, really helped us, really supported us, but the support system that I thought I was going to have, I didn't. And I wanted to touch a little bit about that in this video because I feel like a year on, it is crazy to me how many people are grief illiterate and are very afraid to talk about baby loss, stillbirth, miscarriage, are afraid to talk to us. And it's, you know, I want to say we don't have a disease. We are not going to be sad if you bring up our babies. I absolutely love when anyone brings up Lila and they want to talk about it because it's important, and I don't know why it's taboo and why we have to, you know, be afraid to ask somebody, you know, how are you? I think one of the most common messages that I received was, you know, I'm so sorry, let me know if there's anything I can do, which I'm not even going to sugarcoat it anymore, is the lazy way out of supporting somebody. That is only to make yourself feel better, and then you've put the ball in the other person's court, but you don't realize that that person can barely function. They can barely get out of bed. They're in extreme shock. They have just gone through the most traumatic thing in their lives and they weren't even prepared for it. It wasn't like you're going to have to do this in 5 days, prepare yourself. It was like everything changed in a moment. My whole life changed in just a moment, and I will never be the same again. I can't meet you in the middle right now. I can't give you instructions of what to do. I barely know what I'm doing myself. And I think in those moments, it's really important just to be there for that person in any way that you can, you know, if that's just, you know, turning up to wash their dishes, do laundry, you know, leave a meal at the door. You know, it's just doing the thing and not asking what they need, because I'm going to tell you that 99% of people are not going to tell you that they need something. They don't want to be a burden. It's just not going to happen. That person's not going to reach out. So by sending that message, you're only making yourself feel better and not the person that really needs the help. Also, when somebody is going through something like this, they just want to be validated. They want to be listened to, and they don't need to be fixed. You know, this is not a fixable situation. They just need somebody there to listen and to hold space and to let them cry. And, you know, really, we do not need people to pretend that nothing happened and to talk about something else happened to me and it made me feel crazy. I would listen to somebody, you know, talking about some kind of gossip that was going on, and I'm thinking, I just lost a fucking baby and I almost died. I don't care who's not speaking to who. I got invited for a dinner about 2 or 3 weeks after it happened, and I politely declined. That person then ghosted me. I saw them out and they were like, oh, looked like you needed space. No, I needed friendship. And that, you know, just, I wasn't in a place to go for dinner. That doesn't mean I didn't need support at home. I had people tell me that, what was I expecting? What did I want? People can't magically know what I need. Also, other people are going through bad things and it's not just all about me. It was a lot in that moment, and it took me a long time to forgive those people because they made one of the worst moments of my life about them. And a lot of other people didn't stick up for me. They didn't point that behavior out. They also weren't there for me. And that made pretty much a circle of people that I had while I was living in Mexico disappear overnight. I thought I had a friendship group and I didn't. So then comes a secondary loss, which you have no idea is going to happen. And what I've learned in the lost mom groups and grief groups that I'm a part of, that is the next thing to happen, is a secondary loss, and you will start losing people out of your life. And it could be family, it could be friends, but you start to learn that so many people in your life were just good time friends, or, they're not able to support you in the way that you need. That's okay. It's just the way it is. It's made me very more wary about who I let into my life now. Honestly, I could go on and on with the most bizarre, crazy things that people have said to me. We also have milk come in. I remember when I got discharged from hospital, I actually didn't have a bra and I just had this t-shirt, and I remember leaving actually through the maternity ward, and there was this art of a woman breastfeeding, and I remember just looking down and my t-shirt was stained with milk, and I didn't have anything for that. The doctors at the hospital had given me some medication if I wanted to take it to stop the milk production. I can just remember feeling so confused for a very long time, especially in my last appointment after the loss. Obviously you're still getting assessed, and I remember she put down a sheet of paper in front of me, and it was different methods of contraception. And I was in the same room that only a few weeks ago I'd got an ultrasound, and I'd seen her and I'd heard her heartbeat, and I seen her moving and sucking her thumb. And a few weeks later I am in there looking at contraceptive methods. We continued to stay in Mexico for a little bit longer, but as you guys know, if you've been following my journey, that I've been wanting to leave that island for a long time, and I just never knew where or how. But, I think the universe was brutally directing me into a different direction. Everything was just like, this island is not for you anymore, and everything that I thought was stable was just like crumbling beneath me, and I had nothing left there. So we decided to take a trip to Europe, and that is where we found Austria, where we have moved to now. And it just kind of came out of nowhere. It wasn't actually in our original plan when we traveled, but we got here to Austria, and honestly, it's everything that I had been manifesting. I kept saying to my husband, like, I need to be in the mountains, and I wanted seasons again. I miss seasons. In Holbox, it's just hot 24/7. Although that's nice for a time period, it had almost been 9-10 years, and I was ready for a change. Ready to be closer to home, not, a 10-hour flight. I was ready for a bit more infrastructure and stability, not living on an island where there's no hospital, no doctors. And we got here, and it was literally everything that I had imagined, and we said, we're just going to make it work. So we flew back. A few weeks later to Mexico, we started selling everything, getting rid of all of our stuff, organizing the flights, organizing the paperwork for the cats, and we did it. I don't know how, but we did a flight with 2 cats. We had to fly to France. My parents met us at Paris airport. We then drove back to England. We spent Christmas in England while going backwards and forwards to Austria, looking at apartments, doing paperwork. And then in February, we finally got here. It was perfect. It was snowing. It was cozy. And I just went into full hibernation mode. And honestly, I've just been recuperating and healing from everything that has just happened in this past year since then. I've connected with a lot of other people, with a lot of other lost mums, but in my inner circle I still feel, not gonna lie, extremely lonely, I would say, because it's very hard to find now friendships or people that I feel I can connect with, that I feel like would, wants to be a part of my life in the good moments and in the bad moments, that has the capacity to have compassion and empathy and all of those things. And I still struggle, and I know it's very similar to other people that have lost babies or have lost a partner or a parent way too early. when you get that not meant to be loss, you know, way before their time loss, you feel completely alienated from other people. It's extremely, extremely lonely. And now coming up to this year anniversary and kind of going through everything that happens after loss, it's it's hard. And obviously we moved to a new country, we don't know anybody here, so all of that combined is just kind of overwhelming for me at the moment. This May I am running 50k. It's called 50k in May, and I'm running it for a charity called SANS, which is a stillbirth and neonatal death support or society. I actually contacted them within the first month or two of our loss, kind of was just looking for help. And yeah, I was unfortunately living in Mexico, so I couldn't really get all the benefits that they offer because they're a UK charity, but they do a lot of work and they support a lot of bereaved parents. So it just felt fitting for me to run this charity event, to have something to focus on instead of the immense grief and sadness. So if you would like to donate, I would really, really appreciate it. I will leave the link in the description. I've already run, I think, 26 or 7 kilometers this month. I have a 5k race next week. I've only started running, I think, in March. I've never run in my life, and I've tried it before and I always hated it, but grief will do crazy things to you. Now I'm a runner. Well, I'm not a runner, but I enjoy it. So yeah, I would really appreciate any support. And if you'd want to leave Lila a birthday gift, then yeah, the link is down in the description. And I think that's about as much as I wanted to get off my chest today. I probably forgot a whole lot of things that I wanted to talk about, but maybe that's for another video. I would like to start vlogging again. I don't know how that's gonna look. I would just like to film and edit and put them up anyway, just to get back into the rhythm of it. It's really is a therapy for me. Honestly, I've been filming for almost 10 years and I don't have a big following. I have like 1,000 and something subscribers, which is a lot of people, but I mean, like, I haven't grown massively, but I honestly put videos out because I enjoy doing it. And I've always said that it would be a wonderful gift to look back on in the future, and also for my children to see what mum was up to. So yeah, thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you for listening to my story, and I'll see you in the next video.